There is a particular kind of loneliness that arrives not in silence or solitude, but in the midst of noise. A person can be surrounded by friends at a dinner table, colleagues at a conference, family at a celebration, and yet feel profoundly, achingly alone. This is not physical isolation. The person is not abandoned or excluded. They are present, participating, visible to others. Yet something essential is absent. They are not truly seen. They are not truly known. The conversations around them feel like they're happening in another language, one that their isolation prevents them from understanding. And in that moment, surrounded by people, they feel more alone than they have ever felt. This is the paradox that defines a particular kind of loneliness. The loneliness of being unseen in a crowd, of feeling disconnected despite connection, of yearning for genuine intimacy while surrounded by relationships that feel hollow. There are people at parties who feel utterly alone in crowds, people in relationships who experience profound disconnection despite sleeping beside their partner every night, people with large friend groups who have no one to call during a crisis. They are not physically isolated. They are not excluded or abandoned in any conventional sense. Yet something essential is missing, and that absence becomes louder than any voice in the room. The paradox is this: loneliness is not about the number of people present. It is about the quality of presence, the depth of recognition, the possibility of being truly seen. A person can be surrounded by people and still feel fundamentally unseen. And that particular loneliness, the loneliness of being surrounded yet alone, is perhaps one of the most painful forms of isolation precisely because no one else can see it. The person appears to be engaged, to be connected, to be part of the social world, but inside, they are drowning. Psychologist Sam Carr, who has extensively researched loneliness, notes that everyone is like a jigsaw piece. We want to fit in, yet sometimes others are the reason we feel out of place. Even in friendships or partnerships, they may fail to recognize us for who we are or may render us invisible, compelling us to assume a different persona in their presence. This is the crux of the particular loneliness under consideration. It is not the absence of people, but the absence of genuine recognition within those relationships. A person might spend an entire evening surrounded by friends, laughing and engaging, and yet leave feeling more alone than if they had stayed home. Why? Because during that evening, no one saw them. Not their doubts, not their struggles, not their authentic self. They saw only the version of themselves that they presented, the polished, acceptable, non-threatening version. And that performance, while successful in maintaining the social facade, creates a profound sense of disconnection. The experience is often characterized by a deep sense of being unknown. Despite having many relationships, the person feels that no one truly knows them. They share surface-level details about their lives, what they did that day, their latest achievement, their superficial thoughts, but they do not share their actual inner world. And after years of this surface-level interaction, they begin to wonder if anyone could truly know them or if they are fundamentally unknowable. There is also a sense of emotional distance despite physical proximity. A person might sit across a dinner table from someone they care about, and yet feel as though there is a vast ocean between them. The other person is talking, but their words feel like they are coming from far away. The person's own emotions feel muted, distant, as if they are watching their own life from behind glass. This kind of loneliness often comes with a specific flavor of shame. Because the person has people in their life, they feel they should not be lonely. They question themselves, what is wrong with me? I have friends, I have a partner. Why do I feel so alone? The shame prevents them from speaking about their loneliness, which deepens the isolation. The secret they carry, that they are surrounded by people yet profoundly alone, becomes another thing that separates them from others. The paradox extends to behavior. A lonely person surrounded by others may work harder to maintain social connections, not because these connections fulfill them, but because they desperately hope that if they just try hard enough, something will shift. They may overshare or overperform, trying to convince others and themselves that they are engaged and happy. Or they may withdraw further, assuming that if no one has truly seen them despite all their efforts, perhaps the answer is to stop trying. What is often missed in discussions of loneliness is that being in a room full of people can actually intensify the feeling of isolation. The contrast between the social world happening around them and their internal sense of disconnection becomes sharper. They are reminded, moment by moment, of how separate they are from the apparent ease and connection they witness in others. Chapter 2: The Roots of Invisible Disconnection. The particular loneliness of being surrounded by people does not emerge suddenly. It grows from seeds planted in childhood, from early relational patterns that taught a person certain things about intimacy, connection, and the safety of being truly known. Attachment theory provides a framework for understanding these roots. According to research on attachment styles, secure attachment, the foundation for healthy relationships, develops when a caregiver is consistently attuned, responsive, and emotionally available to a child's needs. A securely attached person grows into an adult who can form genuine, intimate relationships because they learned early that being known is safe, that vulnerability is acceptable, and that others are trustworthy. But for many people, early attachment experiences were not secure. A caregiver may have been emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, or dismissive of emotional needs. The child learned that expressing vulnerability led to rejection or shame. They learned to hide their authentic self to maintain the relationship. They learned that being truly known was dangerous. These patterns continue into adulthood. An anxiously attached adult may desperately want connection but fear the intimacy that genuine connection requires. An avoidantly attached adult may withdraw from relationships, maintaining superficial connections that never require true vulnerability. In both cases, the person ends up surrounded by relationships that lack the depth and authenticity that would alleviate their loneliness. Modern life intensifies these patterns. Social media creates the illusion of connection without the depth of actual intimacy. A person can have hundreds of friends online and still feel profoundly alone. Busyness becomes a cultural norm, leaving little space for the slow, gradual building of genuine connection that actual friendships require. People interact through curated versions of themselves, sharing filtered highlights rather than genuine experiences. There is also the factor of perfectionism and the fear of judgment. Many people, particularly those who experienced conditional love in childhood, learned that they must be perfect to be worthy of love. They hide their flaws, their struggles, their authentic opinions. They present a version of themselves that they believe is acceptable. Perfectionism feels protective. If they are perfect enough, perhaps people will accept them. But perfection prevents genuine connection because genuine connection requires showing the imperfect, struggling human self. Trauma also plays a significant role. People who have experienced relational trauma, betrayal, abandonment, abuse, often develop a deep fear of intimacy. Being truly known means the possibility of being hurt again. So they maintain relationships at a safe distance, engaged but not truly intimate, present but not fully visible. The loneliness of disconnection is often also rooted in a fundamental sense of being fundamentally unlovable. This belief, formed in childhood, reinforced through experiences of rejection or emotional neglect, tells the person that if they are truly known, they will be rejected. So being truly known is worth avoiding, even if it means remaining lonely. What creates this particular kind of loneliness is the collision between two contradictory needs: the human need for genuine connection and the learned belief that genuine connection is not safe or possible. The person remains in relationships because being alone is unbearable, but they keep people at a distance because being truly known feels too dangerous. They end up in a kind of relationship limbo, surrounded by people, but profoundly isolated. Chapter 3. The Neurobiology of Perceived Isolation. The loneliness a person feels while surrounded by others is not merely psychological, it is encoded in the structure and function of the brain. The brain of a lonely person processes social information differently from the brain of a person who feels securely connected. Research on the neurobiology of loneliness has revealed something surprising. The subjective experience of feeling lonely appears to have more impact on brain function than objective social isolation. A person can be physically alone and not feel lonely if they feel secure in their connections. Conversely, a person can be surrounded by people and feel intensely lonely if they perceive themselves as disconnected. This perception of social isolation activates and alters several brain regions. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function and emotional regulation, shows altered activation in lonely individuals. The amygdala, which detects threat, becomes hyperactive. The brain systems responsible for processing social reward, the ventral striatum, show reduced activation in response to social images in lonely people compared to non-lonely people. This means that for a lonely person, even positive social stimuli, images of friendly faces, social interaction, do not activate the brain's reward systems the way they do for securely connected people. A person might be in a joyful social situation, but their brain is not registering it as rewarding or pleasurable. They are biologically unable to feel the satisfaction that the situation should provide. Additionally, lonely individuals show heightened activation in the default mode network and reduced connectivity between brain regions that need to communicate for effective social functioning. The insular cortex, which is crucial for generating predictions about the social environment, shows reduced activation in lonely people. This means they struggle to accurately interpret social cues and predict others' intentions. There is also increased activation in the amygdala and hippocampus, regions associated with threat detection and stress. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. The lonely person's brain is primed to detect social threat, so they interpret ambiguous social situations as rejecting or dismissive. A comment that a non-lonely person might ignore, the lonely person interprets as criticism. A moment of silence becomes evidence that they are not wanted. The brain's threat detection system, hyperactive from the experience of loneliness, begins to generate more loneliness. Researcher Sam Carr notes that the lonelier we become, the more accustomed we are to isolation, making it increasingly difficult to reach out. If you're used to being alone and feeling rejected, you may interpret others' expressions or body language as dismissive, leading to a self-fulfilling prophecy. This neurobiological pattern reinforces the psychological patterns, creating a cycle that is increasingly difficult to break. The lonely brain also shows alterations in neurotransmitter systems, including dopamine and oxytocin, which regulate social motivation and bonding. This means that the lonely person is biologically less motivated to engage with others, even as they desperately want connection. These neurobiological changes are not permanent or unchangeable. The brain possesses neuroplasticity, the ability to form new neural connections and reorganize existing ones. But it means that healing from this particular kind of loneliness requires more than intellectual insight. It requires repeated experiences of genuine connection and safety that can gradually rewire these threat detection and reward systems. Chapter 4. The Layers of Disconnection. The hidden loneliness of being surrounded by people perpetuates itself through psychological patterns that, while initially protective, ultimately deepen the isolation. Emotional avoidance is primary among these patterns. A person surrounded by others may be physically present but emotionally absent, avoiding the feelings that arise in relationships because vulnerability feels too dangerous. When someone asks how they are feeling, they deflect with humor or a vague "I'm fine." When a conversation turns personal, they change the subject. Over time, They become so practiced at this avoidance that they lose touch with their own emotional truth. Superficial relationships become the default. A person surrounds themselves with people who know only the curated version of themselves. These relationships feel safe because they require no genuine vulnerability, but they offer no genuine connection. The person might have frequent social interactions but few meaningful ones. After years of surface-level relationships, they begin to feel that they do not know how to be genuinely close to anyone and that perhaps they are incapable of genuine connection. People-pleasing behavior is another pattern that perpetuates loneliness. Rather than expressing their authentic thoughts and feelings, the person adapts themselves to what they perceive others want. They become a shapeshifter, constantly adjusting to fit the expectations of others. This leaves them feeling unknown and unaccounted for, because the person others like is not actually them. There is also a deep fear of rejection that prevents genuine connection. The person has learned, consciously or unconsciously, that if they show their true self, they will be rejected. This fear is often so strong that it prevents them from even trying. Rather than risk rejection, they stay hidden. Self-fulfilling prophecies can develop. The person believes they are fundamentally unlovable, so they interpret ambiguous social interactions as evidence of rejection. A friend who is busy and unavailable becomes proof that the friendship is not valued. A partner's stress about work becomes evidence that the partner does not care. The person's brain, primed by loneliness to detect threat, actively constructs evidence that confirms their core belief. Some people respond to this hidden loneliness by withdrawing further. If surface-level relationships do not satisfy the hunger for genuine connection, then perhaps the answer is to stop trying. They become more isolated, more defended, more convinced that genuine connection is impossible. Others become what might be called emotionally hyperactive, oversharing, overperforming, trying desperately to create connection through sheer force of effort. They may dominate conversations, constantly seek reassurance, or attempt to manufacture intimacy through dramatic displays of emotion. These strategies often backfire, further alienating them from others. The internal conflict is profound. There is a desperate hunger for genuine connection, for being truly known and accepted, and there is an equally strong belief that such connection is not possible, that being truly known would result in rejection. So the person remains trapped in relationships that feel simultaneously essential and hollow. Chapter 5. The moment of honest recognition. The turning point often begins with a moment of honest acknowledgement. A person might be at a social gathering, surrounded by laughter and connection, and suddenly the reality becomes undeniable. I am not happy here. I do not feel connected, and I do not know how to change this. Sometimes this recognition comes through therapy. A therapist might gently point out the pattern. Relationships that are technically present but emotionally absent, conversations that stay at the surface, the constant effort to be someone other than oneself. The recognition that this is not how relationships have to be. Sometimes it comes through a relationship that refuses to accept the superficial. A partner, friend, or family member might insist on genuine conversation, on seeing the real person. They might say, "I do not want your performance. I want to know you." And for the first time, the person realizes that genuine connection might actually be possible if they are willing to risk being seen. Sometimes it comes through desperation and collapse. After years of maintaining the facade, of being surrounded by people, yet profoundly alone, the weight becomes too heavy. The person cannot sustain the performance any longer. And in that breakdown, something honest emerges. The recognition is often accompanied by grief. The person realizes how much time has been spent in relationships that did not truly nourish them, in connections that never filled the ache of loneliness. There is sadness for the years of disconnection, for the authentic relationships that might have been possible if they had been willing to risk being seen. There is also often anger at the people who taught them that being truly known was unsafe, at the relationships that have demanded their performance but offered no genuine acceptance, at themselves for having participated in their own isolation. But beneath the grief and anger is often a spark of hope. The recognition that the loneliness comes not from being fundamentally unlovable, but from the gap between who they are and who they have been trying to be. The hope that if they close this gap, if they bring their authentic self into relationships, something might shift. Chapter 6. Rebuilding Authentic Connection. Healing from the hidden loneliness of being surrounded by people is not about finding more people. It is about learning to be genuinely present, genuinely vulnerable, and genuinely seen within relationships. The first element of healing is often developing emotional intelligence, the capacity to recognize, understand, and express one's own emotions, and to recognize and understand the emotions of others. This requires learning to check in with oneself, to notice what is actually being felt beneath the surface-level performance. Working with attachment patterns is also essential. Understanding how early relationships shaped one's approach to connection, and then gradually building new relational patterns, can shift the foundation of loneliness. This often requires therapy, where a therapeutic relationship becomes a space to experience genuine attunement and understanding. Vulnerable communication is critical. This means learning to express authentic thoughts and feelings, to share struggles alongside achievements, to risk being seen in one's imperfection. It means saying things like, "I have been struggling. I am afraid of rejection. I do not know if I am worth loving." It means allowing others to truly see the person with all their complexity and contradiction. Somatic practices can be helpful because the held loneliness often lives in the body, in tightness, in breath patterns, in physical disconnection from oneself. Practices like breath work, movement, yoga, and other body-based approaches can help reconnect the person with their physical self, which is the foundation for connecting with others. Seeking out deeper connections is also essential. This might mean being more selective about relationships, investing energy in people who are capable of genuine reciprocal connection rather than spreading oneself thinly across many superficial relationships. It might mean actively creating spaces for deeper conversation, without the agenda of appearing perfect, but with the willingness to be genuinely known. Chapter 7. The Arrival of True Belonging. There is a particular kind of peace that arrives when a person finally experiences genuine connection, when they are in a relationship, romantic, friendship, or otherwise, where they are truly known and genuinely accepted. The shift is gradual. It begins with small moments of authentic presence. A conversation where the person speaks a genuine thought instead of the expected response. A moment where they allow someone to see their sadness instead of performing happiness. A risk of being seen, and the response is acceptance rather than rejection. As these moments accumulate, something shifts neurologically. The brain's threat detection system begins to reset. The reward systems begin to activate in response to social connection. The person gradually learns that being authentically themselves does not result in abandonment. It results in genuine connection. The loneliness does not disappear overnight, but it transforms. There is still the existential loneliness that comes from being an individual in a world with other individuals, the fundamental aloneness of being oneself. But that loneliness is no longer compounded by the disconnection of being surrounded by people who do not truly see you. There is a freedom that comes from no longer having to perform, from allowing people to see your struggles, your doubts, your failures, and being accepted anyway. From knowing that the relationships in your life are built on the foundation of genuine recognition rather than curated performance. Most importantly, there is the discovery that the antidote to the loneliness of being surrounded by people is not solitude or withdrawal. It is genuine connection, authentic presence with others who are willing to see and be seen, to know and be known,